Dobroveče svima. Želim da vas pozdravim u ime Fakulteta za medije i komunikacije i da vam predstavim našu današnju gošću, Katrin Malabu, koja je jedna od možda najznačajnijih savremenih francuskih filozofkinja, predaje na londonskom, što je opet jedan od paradoksa savremenog doba, Institutu za savremenu modernu filozofiju pri King's College-u, takođe predaje na Irvineu u Sjedinim Američkim Državama. Kod nas su objavljene 3 knjige koje reprezentuju njen rad: Ontologija nezgode, Multimedijalni institut Mama iz Zagreba, Šta da radimo sa našim mozgom, FMK 17 i Preobražaj inteligencije. Ovo će nas danas suočiti za jednim zaista izuzetnim i neočekivanim predavanjem. Dear Professor Malabu, it's a great honor to introduce and to give you words for your lecture. But now, Professor Čekić.
Dobroveče. Sasvim kratko, zaista imamo jednu retku priliku da čujemo jednog izvanrednog mislioca, ili ako hoćete, misliljku. Zašto? Zato što je to jedna velika hrabrost da se u ovom trenutku u jednoj situaciji relativne krize zapadne filozofije i humanistike uopšte, zaista neko kao profesor Malabu otvori prema nekim novim kretanjima, posebno prema kognitivnim istraživanjima i mapiranju mozga. Najveći problem onoga što se zove, da kažem, klasična, kontinentalna filozofija je upravo to da ima, da kažem, izvestan problem sa kognitivnim istraživanjima, sa genetikom, sa biologijom, mapiranjima i sl. U ovom slučaju prvi put imamo da neko zaista otvoreno kaže: dobro, hajde da vidimo šta mi u stvari radimo sa našim mozgom, na sve moguće načine. Dakle, u kakvom su odnosu društvo i naše, da kažem, mentalne strukture. Izvanredno zaista tu liniju otvara Malabu i mislim da je to jedna od budućih ekstremno provokativnih linija zapadnog mišljenja. Zašto? Pa zato što zapravo, kako god hoćete to da zovete, mi više nismo u nekom, da kažem, stanju u kome smo do sad bili, ulazimo u posthumano doba i tu će pitanja koje otvara profesor Malabu zaista biti ekstremno važna. Dakle, evo, ajde da čujemo sad gde stvari.
Well, thank you very much. I suppose that you said kind things about me, so thank you very much. I'm sorry I cannot express myself in your language, unfortunately, so I hope that you won't mind my English. So I'm very pleased and honored to be here in Belgrade. It's really a great pleasure for me to discover this new audience and to present my work in front of you. Okay, so you see this image. I will comment on it in a moment and see you more. But before that, let me start with an introduction. Tonight I will talk about artificial intelligence. Recently I was reading in a French magazine the following thing. I was struck by this sentence: the real front line of the 21st century lies in intelligence. So it is clear that what's happening today with artificial intelligence is the opening of a front line that is of a kind of war. At least it is presented like that. And it seems to me that an important philosophical task today is to understand what exactly this conflict is about and why it is presented as a conflict. Of course, we understand that the conflict pertains to the competition between human intelligence and cybernetic intelligence. 10 years ago still, we were supposed to be in this epoch called epoch of weak IA, weak artificial intelligence. And so, in a sense, we were not afraid because weak artificial intelligence, and the philosopher John Searle has a book about that, it was like, okay, artificial intelligence will be able to do many things, but never to compete with us. And definitely will be stronger than the machines, and there is no problem. But now, as you know, things have changed, and we are moving to the epoch of strong artificial intelligence. And I will just give you 2 examples of what this change is about. Like, I will tell you about 2 recent developments in artificial intelligence that really provoked a real change in the story of this discipline. And then I will show you more pictures. So the first one is the invention of new computational architectures and IBM's recent design of a totally new type of chip called the neurosynaptic chip. So for a long time, computers were said to never be able to imitate the human brain. But now, with this invention of these new chips, things have changed. In 2011, so it's quite recent, Dharmendra Modha, who's the founder of IBM's cognitive computing group at IBM Research, developed with his team this first cognitive chip. It is called a cognitive chip, thus concretizing what is called by IBM the Synapse project, Synapse for systems of neuromorphic, adaptive, plastic, scalable electronics. The ambition was to develop low-power electronic neuromorphic computers that could scale to biological levels. So more recently, a still improved chip came to light. Its name is True North. It is made of 4,096 neurosynaptic cores and able to simulate around 1 million neurons. I quote this engineer, this IBM engineer, Modha. If we think of today's von Neumann computers as akin to the left brain, fast, symbolic, number-crunching calculators, then True North can be likened to the right brain, slow, sensory, pattern-recognizing machines. So it means that with this True North chip, we're able to simulate the right brain, which until now was something impossible. So True North is used in facial recognition, in artificial eyes, artificial nose, and its specificity is that the different correlates it is made of function autonomously, and the energy can be variable. It is said to mimic the brain in that sense, because just like our brain, it can adapt its functioning to the context and not squander its energy all at once, but measure it. So I would say that the first major progress in artificial intelligence is the functioning of the cybernetic core of the computer that function like a human brain. The second example is the invention of what is now called recurrent artificial neural networks that are computing systems inspired by the biological network that constitute animal brains. Such systems, recurrent artificial neural networks, are said to be able to learn tasks by considering examples, generally without task-specific programming. So it's a new type of networks. You don't have to program the computer. The network will, by itself, learn how to function. So for example, in image recognition, these networks might learn to, I give you an example, might learn to identify images that contain cats. You say to the computer, recognize cats. So they will first analyze images that have been manually labeled as cat or non-cat, and you ask the neural network to recognize other cats, and they do this without any a priori knowledge about cats. They don't know that cats have fur, tails, whiskers, and cat-like faces, but instead they evolve by developing their own set of relevant characteristics from the learning material that they process. I'm sorry, it's a bit complicated. It means that these neural networks are able to invent their own rules of functioning while they are processing. You don't have to program them in the beginning. This is what is called, I'm sure you've heard about that, deep learning. That is, computers that are able, or systems that are able to learn by themselves their own functioning. So it's a revolution in programming, because it breaks with the model of a pre-programming activity and then the computer being just executing. And of course, artificial recurrent neural networks are also implied in these Google car without drivers, these automatic cars. So I could develop forever these new progresses in artificial intelligence. I'm sure you've all heard of singularity, augmented humanity, transhumanism. You're aware of all the sci-fi projections that these recent developments in AI are rising. So again, the general question I want to deal with today is how far AI will be able to go when it comes to simulate the human. So I chose here to concentrate on a specific aspect of this question, which is the problem called the problem of the Uncanny Valley. I will, of course, explain what that is in a moment. So why, and in the first moment of my talk, I will explain to you why I chose to develop this point. In a second moment, I will also justify my passage from the uncanny to the queer, why I decided to substitute the notion of queerness to that of uncanniness. So the Uncanny Valley, I will explain in a moment what it is, takes us into the world of robots. So there's a major difference, of course, between artificial intelligence and robots. And the question is, these new systems, like these new neuronal chips or these new artificial networks, what bodies should we give them? So it's a major issue in robotics engineering at the moment. The engineers working in the US mainly, in Google mainly, ask themselves, should we give robots, that is incarnation of artificial intelligence, should we give them a human appearance or a non-human appearance? And it's a major question. I will try to explain to you why. So you have human, it's called humanoid robots or human-like robots. So the question is it the best form to incarnate artificial intelligence or not? So the concept of the Uncanny Valley was invented by the robotic professors, a Japanese professor called Masahiro Mori. And the name of it in Japanese, I'm sorry for my accent, is Bukimi no Tani Jensho. And this was invented in 1970. The term was translated into English as Uncanny Valley. And of course, the uncanny, as you know, refers to Freud's essay from 1919 called The Uncanny. But Mori was not aware of this connection. It's the American translators who said, oh, there's a link. It seems to be a link between what Freud says about the uncanny that concerns automats, animated dolls, etc., and what this Japanese professor is talking about. So what is the Uncanny Valley according to Mori? The Uncanny Valley, I have to stand up a little bit, is, well, the valley is all this, okay? It's called a valley because it has the form of a valley with the top, the bottom, and then the other side. So the theory is that. So it measures human likeliness of the robots. Mori says that when robots do not look like human beings, that's okay. We are at the top of the valley. It means that these robots are sympathetic to us. They can raise empathy. We like them, okay? When they look like animals, like stuffed animals, you know, like that, or humanoid robots, but not too resembling. That's okay. We like robots, and I will show you some images in a moment. But when the robots look human, but not perfectly, when they are almost human, but not exactly human, just as the two women I showed you a moment ago, then they provoke in us this feeling of uncanniness, which is both an attraction and a repulsion. Okay? This feeling of discomfort that Freud has analyzed in his text, and I will give you some definitions in a moment of what Freud says. So when we feel this uncanny thing, we are at the bottom of the valley. We are deep in the valley. You see the uncanniness is this, because what happens when we see an imperfectly resembling robot, almost human but not quite, we necessarily think of corpses. It's the zombie effect. It's like if we saw dead people resurrecting. Okay? So this is why Maury says, this is the bottom of the valley. This is where we feel the most intense, uncanny feeling, and we don't like these robots. We don't have sympathy for them. We don't have empathy for them. If we were able to create perfectly resembling robots, this time, perfectly resembling, then, according to Maury, we would get out of the valley again. That would be okay. But according to him, this is impossible. So his theory is we should not produce humanoid robots. We should incarnate artificial intelligence this is Leonardo. He's a very intelligent robot. He has facial expressions. He can talk. His function is to educate children to morals. So he can say, this is not good, this is good, etc. He's very amazing. And according to Maury, this is a good robot, because you don't have the uncanny feeling. On the contrary, you say, oh, he's so cute, etc. Even if he's very intelligent. Or, like that. This is Pepper. You also have Neo, fabricated by French engineers. So these are social robots. The vocation is to help you, is to care about you, mainly elderly people, or they can assure the security in your home. According to Maury, that's okay. Why that? It's because, why do we feel this uncanny feeling, this uncanny thing when we are confronting human robots? Maury says, because when robots have a skin, clothes, when they have these silicon faces, like these, so now I'm showing you robots made by this incredible engineer. He's called Ishiguro.
Yes.
Hiroshi.
He was our guest. Yes.
Really?
He was here, yes.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. Yes. I admire him very much. But you can see what I mean, like this creepiness of the robots. So, they really look like human beings. And at the same time, we don't feel comfortable because at the same time, we see that something is not exactly. So this is Ishiguro with his own double, with his own sosie. And Maury says, when we are confronted with this kind of robots, as I said, we have the feeling of death. And we have the same discomfort that when we see perfectly realistic prostheses. And Freud also in his text talks about hand prostheses. When you have hyper-realistic prostheses, and Maury says we have exactly the same reaction as with robots. That is, what happens exactly? Freud already said that an automaton makes us uneasy because an automaton always blurs the frontier between the animate and the inanimate, the living and the dead. And Freud says it is very difficult, and he talks about an Hoffman tale that is the Sandman, where there's an automaton, very frightening one. Freud says it blurs the frontier between a real person and a machine, and this makes us extremely feel very strange. And he gives the examples, I quote Freud, of these impressions made on us by waxwork figures, ingeniously constructed dolls, automata, but also severed limbs, a severed head, a hand detached from the arm, feet that dance by themselves. Freud concludes, and he says, all of these have something highly uncanny about them. because, of course, as we already said, we have the feeling of a false semblance of death, like the raising of the dead. And as we saw a moment ago, the most creepy creature at the bottom of the valley is the zombie. So again, the reason of this phenomenon of uncanniness happens when, according to Mori, the automaton is very resembling, but not quite, that there's a little difference between the automaton and reality. So, of course, again, we should limit ourselves to create that type of robots. What is the problem? So as we said, it's the frontier between life and death, etc. But why? Because we know at the same time that these robots are not really alive. So why don't we like them, according to Mori? It is, he says, because at the moment, the emotional rejection of robots, our emotional reactions in general, come from the fact that there are no social rules that would codify our reactions in front of a robot. At the moment, we don't have any code of behavior in front of the machines. We still don't have an ethics that would help us behave in front of the machines. And at the same time, these rules exist when it comes to sick people or even dead people. So, you know, the problem is that we know how to behave. We have a code of reactions, even if it's not easy. We have a code of reactions, emotional reactions, in front of sick people or dead people, but not in front of machines. So, in fact, what happens is that we transfer the reactions that we have in front of sick people or dead people to the machines, and this creates this feeling of uncanniness. So Mori's conclusion is very, very strict. We have to avoid human-like robots totally. So if we want to give them a little bit of human shape, then we only have one solution. Either for the hand prosthesis, go back to wood. So Mori argued that we should go back to old materials in order to make the uncanniness disappear. So go back to old material, or if we really want to have humanoid robots, they should look like a god. And this is the idea that the ideal robot should look like Buddha. Very interesting idea. It says, so I took that from a Korean artist, Wang-Zi Wang, who's fascinating as well. This is Mori's idea that we might tolerate a human-like robot if at the same time this robot is not exactly a human, but a divine person. And this artist creates robotic Buddha that can, you know. And this is very interesting. Oh, no, I'm going too fast. Because I don't know if you know what Heidegger, the German philosopher Heidegger, says about technology. He says the only way to apprehend technology without being frightened is to develop this kind of serendipity that is cool, like that. And so we are not that far from what Heidegger says with these Buddha-like robots. Like the only way, according to Mori, that would pacify this uncanniness would be to give the robot something like a divine kind of look and behavior. But the problem is that this have raised a polemic, a very strong polemic. And of course, other engineers that are more contemporary, more recent, are strongly challenging this theory of the Uncanny Valley. And they argue that, on the contrary, we should give robots human appearances because, well, because there are several reasons for that. I will give you some, but the idea is that is it really nice to fabricate these robots that look like animals? Because this takes us back to childhood. If we have robots that look like, you know, the ones I show you a moment ago, like Pepper or Neo, or Leonardo, we're treated like children. And it is also uncanny. So we should definitely give them a human look. I will show you that in a moment, but I'm sure you've heard about David Hanson. He's at the head of the Hanson company, and he designed recently Sophia. You know, this first citizen robot. Sophia was made a citizen of Saudi Arabia, and she is very realistic. And I don't know if well, I'll show you Sophia in a moment. Sorry, I'm a bit... Okay, so what is Hanson's argument? He wrote an article called Upending the Uncanny Valley, that is, putting an end to Uncanny Valley. We have to move to another theory and stop talking in terms of the Uncanny Valley. He says, look, if we look at this artist's work, Ron Muke, he's a sculptor. I think he's New Zealander or Australian. I can't remember. Huh? New Zealander. And Ron Muke, who's also very impressive, used to work for a robotic company. He says, look, if we look at this work of Ron Muke, we will find almost resembling, well, that kind of things Maury was talking about, like resembling human figures, but not quite. And at the same time, according to Hanson, we don't have this uncanniness. We can look at his work without really feeling uncanny. And even if what Muke does is extremely realistic, but not quite. It's realistic, but not quite, because it's out of proportion, because it has a kind of... And Hanson says, so what? We're not really afraid. We find it strange. We find it astonishing. But we don't, according to Hanson, I don't know if he's right, we're not exactly at the bottom of the valley. So this is another sculpture. So this work is absolutely fascinating. And of course, Muke plays with that, with this uncanny without being uncanny. And Hanson says, there is no problem. He says, let me quote what he says, Hanson. There is no valley, which means that the theory needs a new name and a new framework. We suggest that any level of realism can be socially engaging if one designs the aesthetic well. So for Hanson, there is no problem if the robot is beautiful. Okay? So it's not about giving it the look of Buddha or the wooden hand. It's if one designs the aesthetic well. Thus, people may find the robot strange, but not frightening. So according to him, this is beautiful, even if strange. There is a strong emphasis on the aesthetic, artistic. So he says, if we design robots from an artistic perspective, then we will find them strange, but not frightening. I quote again, in future work, it will be important to push the science of the art and the art of the science of robots. And he says, we have to substitute what he calls the path of engagement for the Uncanny Valley. So this is very interesting. What he says, the path of engagement means moral engagement, like the way to solve the problem. You remember a moment ago I said we don't have a code of behavior in front of robots. In order to solve this problem, the moral problem of the code, we have to make the robots beautiful. So I think this is a very interesting proposition, according to which beauty will solve the moral problem. Very, at the same time, very philosophically challengeable, arguable, but interesting. So we should stop to create these creepy robots that look almost like human, but still the silicon is not perfect, they're not beautiful. If we do them beautiful, then, and I think that for you, because I imagine that many of you are artists or art students, I think this is a great challenge. Like, how far can art go in order to solve ethical problems that our society cannot solve? In particular, the body of artificial intelligence. So this was, let's say, the two sides of the discussion about the body of artificial intelligence. Should we design robots that look like human or not? Or not? No, Maury says. Yes, Hansen says. So now I come to the last part of my talk and develop my own point of view, which is that this discussion is, of course, very interesting, but according to me, it avoids what has become an urgent issue. Because what is lacking in this discussion is that this discussion only concerns, as you can see, the problem of the body. Body imitation, facial imitation, skin, etc. So, of course, the body is important, because when it comes to empathy, when it comes to sympathy, of course, the body is, in the first place, extremely important. When it comes to emotion, when it comes to the psyche, etc., of course, the body is important. But in Freud's text also, we only find the problem of the body. Or, according to me, this is not sufficient, because nobody ever questioned in this discussion the part played by intelligence proper in the Uncanny Valley phenomenon. What I think is that these robots are not creepy because of their physical appearance, they are creepy because they are intelligent. So the creepiness comes from their mind and not only from their body. And nobody really talks about that. Nobody questions philosophically or aesthetically the uncanniness created by human-like intelligence, not only physical appearance, but intelligent appearance. What does a simulated intelligence, what effect does a simulated intelligence produce on us? What kind of uncanniness, when we say this machine is intelligent, of course it creates an effect that goes, according to me, far beyond the only bodily problem. What effects does an artificial brain, an artificial cognitive system, an artificial thinking, speaking device rise? The essential difference between Maury's robots and handsome robots is that the latter are intelligent. You know, it's true that, and I will show you a movie, a little video as a conclusion to show you who Handsome's robots are. They are really intelligent. And I think that the uncanniness has moved today from the body to the mind. And I think this is what makes us uncomfortable today, much more than physical appearance. It is the robotic mind that has become animated. Because when Freud talks about automata, he talks about body automats. He doesn't talk, of course, Freud didn't know that one day the mind also could be automatic. But what happens when the mind itself is a machine? What path of engagement for intelligence today? It's not. We have to redefine, I think, the Uncanny Valley as well as the path for engagement, as Hansen says, for intelligence. If we refer to what Freud says or what Maury says, we have to ask ourselves whether artificial intelligence can create a new zombie effect, that is a new effect of death within life, like that created by an artificial hand. What is the difference between an artificial limb and an artificial mind? I think these questions are becoming really urgent. So I cannot really propose an answer, but I would like to conclude with Freud And this is where I propose that we move from uncanniness to queerness. Why that? Because I wonder if the reaction against simulated brains and thinking machines does not come from a repressed and still unknown and unqualified type of what I will call homoeroticism, coming from a specific kind of sexual attraction and repulsion of the mind for the mind. What I might call a kind of homo-intelligibility. Because why do I bring the sexual problem here? Because according to Freud, if we read his text closely, we discover that this uncanniness, like the fact that we think that robots are dead, or pertains from the fact that, I quote Freud, everything that was intended to remain secret, hidden, had come into the open. The uncanniness always occurs when something that should have remained hidden, out of sight, is all of a sudden made visible. And Freud says this is precisely the sexual part of the uncanniness, that we see something that we should not see normally. And what if, so this is my hypothesis, what if artificial intelligence was currently offering us a new version of this sexual secret that all of a sudden is brought into the open? Again, that would not be a bodily effect, like the kind of attraction, repulsion, a physical one, but a mental one. So I think maybe in the next month, I hope, I would like to develop more on this topic. Like, is there something like a sexual attraction of the mind for itself? In an article called The Uncanny and the Queer Experience, the art theoretician Vincent Boursol, French one, explains that, I quote, before being published in the article of 1919, he talks about Freud, after several years of theoretical elaboration, the uncanny had already been present in the text of the Rat-Man case in 1909, which means that Freud used the term uncanny for the first time in 1909 when he analyzed a sexual problem, that of the Rat-Man. So the initial context of the uncanny was sexuality. Freud quotes the Rat-Man, and the Rat-Man told Freud, I quote, there were certain people, girls, who pleased me very much, and I had a very strong wish to see them naked. But in wishing this, I had an uncanny feeling, as though something must happen if I thought such things, and as though I must do all sorts of things to prevent it. So very clearly, the Rat-Man uses the word uncanny to designate a kind of sexual repression, a kind of sexual uncanniness, precisely. And in another article by Nicholas Roy in 2003, Nicholas Roy suggests, I quote, that the simultaneous emergence of queer and the uncanny at the end of the 19th century points out to an important affinity between them. So I wonder if we could not rethink this affinity between the uncanny and the queer in order to try to describe what happens today, again, at the mental level, that is at the mind level, this strange relationship that our brain develops with the automatic version of itself. So I will conclude, as I said, by showing you, this short video showing a robot created by Hanson. So this robot is Philip K. Dick robot. So I know you all know who Philip K. Dick is. Sorry, let me put the full screen. So Hanson created Philip K. Dick, the creator of Blade Runner. He's the most sophisticated type of intelligent robot. And we can discuss then, you can tell me whether what is the most uncanny in this robot? Is it his body or is it his mind?
I like kids because we can play, and I don't...
As we chat, Philip's synthetic brain starts humming, building a sort of mental model of me. Facial recognition software analyzes and tracks my face, as speech recognition software transcribes and sends my words to a database for a reply.
Just calm down.
Before long, we're in deep conversation. Do you agree with Descartes? And I think, therefore I am? Do you think?
A lot of humans ask me if I can make choices or is everything I do and say is programmed. The best way I can respond to that is to say that everything humans, animals, and robots do is programmed to a degree.
So how much of that is coming from what you've programmed it to say?
It's a mix. Some of it's coming from knowledge on the web, some of it is written.
And as my technology improves, it is anticipated that I will be able to integrate new words that I hear and learn online and in real time. I may not get everything right, say the wrong thing, and sometimes not know what to say, but every day I make progress. Pretty remarkable, huh?
Wow. You're a very good-looking man.
You're starting to overinflate my ego. But don't let me stop you.
Philip's stunning good looks comes from David's patent.
Okay, so sorry for the, thank you, sorry for the glitch. So you can see that, well, this Philippe K. mind is made of a kind of internal library. They integrated his whole work into his mind, but also, as the engineer says, some quotes here and there on the web. And as you understood, the robot is able to process all these quotes and invent them sometimes. And he has a kind of faculty of improvisation. And you can see, of course, it was very short, but that at some point when the guide tells him, "You're very good-looking man," you can see this start of a mode of homoeroticism I was talking about. So again, and I think that if the robot was present in this room, the effect would be even more striking. Again, my question, and I will leave you on that, is what is the most uncanny in this robot? Is it his mind or his body? Thank you very much.
So you mentioned John Searle. Are you familiar with another philosopher, Hubert Dreyfus, who used Heidegger's philosophy to criticize the very concept, the possibility of artificial intelligence? In other words, he used Heidegger's critique of intelligence itself and then applied it to artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So maybe I can, for the students, summarize the basic critique, and then I want to hear your opinion of it. So the basic concept that Dreyfus proposed is that intelligence itself is a sort of a, maybe post-structuralist would call it narrative. So it's a way of understanding ourselves when we talk about ourselves as intelligent.
Okay.
But that we're primarily an involved practice through what he called Dasein. In other words, that if you try to recreate something that is an interpretation itself, it's impossible. Or maybe, let me try to put it this way. We cannot get clear enough on who we are and how we function or how we come to describe what we do as intelligence in order to recreate that artificially. So in a way, intelligence is impossible, let alone artificial intelligence. So that would be the basic, how would I put it, simplification of Dreyfus's argument.
Okay.
My other comment is not related to this, so maybe if you can respond to this if I was clear enough.
Okay. All right. You know, for me, what you just said, and thank you very much for pointing out this reference to Dreyfus, that is, of course, extremely interesting. And I know that type of argument well. But if I may say this to you, it seems to me that precisely what you just said is the perfect expression of a psychic reaction. I don't take this as a philosophical argument. I take this as a psychic reaction. I think that what you just told me is, it is impossible. Artificial intelligence won't ever be able to simulate something like human intelligence. I'm sorry to say that it is not true. Okay?
And you know,
right?
Was notorious for this because that was his first book. He was the first one to publish it.
And plus it was his first book, but even today you have people that still affirm that, no, never, no. Machines, artificial intelligence is just a fantasy. It won't ever be able to simulate the human brain. And of course, at the same time, these people perfectly see that what they think to be impossible is becoming more and more possible. So I do think that all reactions of this type, like, no, it is impossible, they won't ever be able to do as well as we do, etc., is these reactions are psychic, and this is where we need Freud. They are more psychic than rational. Oh. Because, you know, Heidegger is a very good example. He hates the notion of intelligence in German. He hates that. He says we cannot reduce human spirit to intelligence. But what does, I mean, this partition itself, you know, for a long time as a philosopher, I believed that. Okay? We have a mind, we have a spirit, but not intelligence. You know, intelligence is really like for animals or machines. But this very separation itself doesn't have any solid basis, you know. Because what is spirit then? Is it, like Maurice says, a kind of divine instance? I mean, intelligence is a word that we should not be afraid of. Okay?
My second comment has nothing to do with this, but it's something I was also inspired by what you were talking about, which is more about Freud. And I remember Searle in particular, John Searle, whom you mentioned. He said when Freud coined the term subconscious, or when he used the term subconscious, he opened up kind of a Pandora's box, because it's a term that you cannot prove and you cannot disprove. So for example, when you talk about homoeroticism, that might be coming from our subconscious. It might be, but there is no way to prove it or to disprove it. It might or it might not.
Exactly like a robot. It might or it might not. Now, this is exactly, I mean, what you're telling me is, well, is exactly the effect I was trying to describe, like the effects raised by the robot, that you don't know if they are or if they aren't. But precisely with artificial intelligence, we have to admit that we are in this space. So we can call it a valley, we can call it a path. We are in this space, very strange, where we know and we don't know. There is this kind of non-scientific thing within science. And I think this is where philosophy has to come into the picture.
Thank you so much. I just have to say,
maybe other people, I'm sorry.
Sure, no problem. But Searle and Dreyfus were my professors, so I had to defend them.
And thank you. These are very interesting.
Thank you.
I have a question with regard to this notion that you talked about in your book, The Future of Hegel, is the insistent accident. And it was spoken about in this relation between genus and species. And
between, sorry, what?
Genus, genus and species. And in that passage, you were writing about the essentializing of the accident and the accidentalizing of the essence. How would you fit? I was thinking that maybe, when you're talking about how we experience robots, it is maybe down to this notion of the insistent accident, which we embody, but somehow is something that is within the robot mind, something that is eliminated and that we ourselves are not actually able to eliminate.
To eliminate the accident.
Exactly. Whereas the robot mind itself is actually configured and constructed to, in a sense, to minimize the accident, whereas we are constantly repeating the accident. And I was thinking maybe it's this dissonance. Okay.
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much. It's interesting that you're referring to Hegel in this discussion. I wouldn't have dared doing it here in this talk, but it's interesting because according to Hegel, our mind functions like a machine. This is the meaning of the system, what he calls the system. And as you know, in the final moment of his philosophy, he said that there was not even anything like a particular subjectivity, that the human mind is creating a world that functions by itself like a system which is very close to the nervous system or the robotic system. This kind of automatic systematicity. So since the beginning, I was always interested in philosophers who had that kind of vision of the mind. Because to go back to the conflict between the human mind and the mechanical mind, it is very clear that if we didn't have automatisms in our intelligence, we would not be able to think anything. Our intelligence is made of automatisms. For example, at the moment I'm speaking to you, and this is a kind of automatic thing. If I have to think of every word I'm saying, if I had to be intelligent when I speak to you, I wouldn't be intelligent. So it is very important, and I think Hegel was the first one to see that between the mind and the machine, there's a strong similarity. So about the accident. Precisely, of course, this is a very interesting question. A robot, I think, won't ever be able to make the difference between an essence and an accident. But precisely, one of their vocations today is to help us dealing with accidents. Okay? Robots are, one of the trends of artificial intelligence is precisely made to help us curing, improving our relationships to accidents. Like, for example, these new cars are said to be much safer than normal cars. These robots I was showing, like the little Neo or Pepper, are here to help elderly people, to prevent them from having accidents. So precisely, it's interesting to see that even if robots don't have, of course, a concept of the accident, they are made for helping us, clearing our relationships, philosophical relationships to accidents. This is what I would say. We are not that certain ourselves of what an accident is. I don't think it eliminates desire at all, because precisely all my talk was about this kind of specific attraction we have for the robots. It doesn't eliminate desire at all, according to me. On the contrary, I think it raises a new form of desire that we have to think about. And I'm not talking here about sexual robots. It's something more general. It's about this attraction, repulsion we have for the mechanical mind, cybernetic mind.
When I have been young, I have worked in industry as engineer on artificial intelligence. It was 30 years ago. It was prehistory. But I always have problem. What is difference between us and them? And from your lecture, I understand difference from side of us. We have desire. Robots have to support us, to help us. But what's happened with them?
What do you mean, what happens
with them? Does they have intention? Does they have possibility to have wish or to have intention in general philosophical sense? But because if we speak about the relations between two subjects, two intelligence, then it is the two directions relation. We speak only on one direction. What is with other directions?
So, of course, this is a major question, like whether they have intentions or emotions, etc. Of course not. Okay, this is entirely our projections on them. But the problem is that when I say it's only our projections, it's not something minor, it's an enormous phenomenon, because when I project my own desire on a robot, it produces this kind of incarnation, personification that has a very strong effect. And so, yes, I can perfectly be the victim of the illusion that the robot has intention, just because I projected them on it. But that's precisely what these new engineers are saying, that it works like that. The question of incarnation of artificial intelligence is all about projection, what we project in them, which is a part of the problem. We cannot, I mean, and I think this is also what Maury says, if we have little animals or little friendly robots, according to Maury, we won't project less on them, or just little not important things. But when it comes to humanoid robots, we will project more. And this is where the problem comes. And he says, so that's why we have to invent these Buddha-like robots, etc., because we will project less on them. But what Hanson argues is that it is impossible to limit this phenomenon of projection. So we have to accept it.
But for me, that doesn't mean that I have relation with robot like English noble with the black slaves. I have intention, they have not intention.
Yeah, but the problem, yeah, okay, of course. But precisely, you cannot enslave a robot. This is another very interesting part of the problem, is that a certain development of artificial intelligence will prevent us to experiment on animals, for example, will prevent us from enslaving people, because of course you cannot treat a robot as a slave. That doesn't mean anything. But I think this is another dimension of the conversation, that this is the positive, according to me, side of artificial intelligence, is that it emancipates us from alienation in a certain sense, because you cannot, if I say I'm treating my robot like a slave, it doesn't mean anything. This is, it is made for serving me. So.
But then he is not intelligent.
He's a robot.
Okay, thank you.
Which means intelligent, but not. He's a simulated intelligence. I mean, and I think this is the difficult.
Yes, it's difficult.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
So do you think maybe that the uncanniness reside in the fact that the artificial intelligence is making reflective judgments in the Kantian sense? Because we don't seem to have that uncanny feeling when the machines, computers, phones are doing determinate judgments for us, you know, subsuming the facts,
yeah,
the fact that it's going from the bottom up. That would be it, really simply.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much.
Knit it in the web of the notions as the relation to the body, to the otherness, to the exteriority, or or the intelligence in general? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I don't know if we can reason. I would have to think more about that in terms of determining or reflective judgments in the Kantian sense. But for sure, there is something akin to that. You remember when I quoted Moda? He said, "Until now we had left brain computers. Now we have right brain computers as well," which means that until now we had quantifying computers. It was about extension calculation. Now we have quality, intensity modes of computing. So according to me, it's more about quantity and quality. For a long time, computers were all about quantity, and we still have this problem with data, etc., big data. Okay, they go fast, they calculate faster than us, etc. But the problem, and you're totally right, the uncanniness starts when it comes to quality. That is, these computers able to have facial responses, emotional responses, imitate a style, imitate a painter style, etc. And this was a very important conversation in the beginning of the 20th century in France, where the philosopher Henri Bergson told the first experimental psychologist, you know, the one who discovered the IQ, etc., you won't ever be able, and this also relates to the problem of Heidegger's rejection of intelligence. You can, with intelligence, the concept of intelligence, you can do a calculation, you can do mathematics, you can deal with extension, quantity, but not with quality. Quality, intensity is reserved to the human mind. And of course, the uncanniness appears with quality. Huh?
But the quality, when you think on the other side, in Hegel, the quality is in the sphere of being there, de l'être là.
Precisely. And okay? Precisely, the problem starts when the computer is there, almost like a Dasein.
But
precisely.
But can we then transfer that problem to the sphere of essence, maybe, in the relation? Maybe there resides some kind of an answer to go outside, but by going within the sphere of being, to find ourselves in the essence in our relations to the robots. I don't know if you can jam on that.
I mean, this also would be another dimension of the problem that is ontological. But of course, you have also, I'm sorry, I'm referring to French philosophers, but if you look at Gilbert Simondon's work, it is an ontology of technology. That is, you're quite right that it is totally possible to start with the being there of the machine up to an essence of the machine. Absolutely, and I think we should read Simondon on that point.
Thank you.
I mean, my point is really to try to fluidify the oppositions, to encourage all of us to go beyond like these frontiers, like, oh, no, they won't ever be like us. They want, you know, to try to plastify these frontiers, because I think that if we remain enclosed in these frontiers, we won't be able to really apprehend the problem. That's my view.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Two brief questions. First one, so they don't have emotions, and they don't have intentions, but they will learn by themselves. Isn't that a problem? The first thing. And the second thing, Sophia is a slave or a citizen? By that theory, if robots are made to be slaves and she is a citizen, that is a confusion.
Well, I'm not very happy with the Sophia phenomenon, because I think that the fact that Saudi Arabia made her a citizen is very politically, I mean, disgusting, if I may say what I think. Because as we know, in this country, women are not free citizens precisely. And to promote her, a citizen is a very, it's interesting, of course, but I don't think this is the path we should follow. I don't think this is the path of engagement we should follow. Not like that. Not in these hyper-capitalistic countries. And okay. So I'm not at all convinced by this phenomenon. I think this is bad and that we should analyze why it is bad. Now the enslavement. I mean, as you know, Marx says somewhere that the machines will emancipate us from slavery and labor. And in a sense, I think this is still true. I don't see the problem of the enslavement of the machines. I mean, according to me, doesn't mean anything. Okay? So the problem becomes, what will we do when we are totally unemployed and when the machines will work in our place? So this is another question. Okay? It is true that it will necessitate a new kind of vision of the social, new forms of policies, for sure. But the enslavement of the machine per se, I think this is the reversion, I mean, an inversion of the problem. On the contrary, the machines are here to liberate us from enslavement. But again, on the Saudi Arabia thing, I'm not at all convinced. I mean.
Okay, the last question.
Well, I would like to try to respond to your question, actually. What was more uncanny
about the robot?
Yes, his intelligence or his body, because, well, I must say that this robot to me did not really seem that intelligent to make me feel uncanny. I mean, yes, he is able to reproduce, to imitate human conversation, but I think something more, I mean...
Yeah, I'm sorry because my video was not that good. I mean, we should have it here, this robot. I'm sorry, it's very difficult to see on a little video like that. I understand, I perfectly understand. When I was watching it myself, I said, oh, this is not that convincing because it's short, because... but at the same time, it is still amazing. I mean,
yes, I actually, I agree that intelligence, this artificial intelligence can produce this uncanniness in us. But I don't think that, I still think that the body is also an important part of it. In this video, what was uncanny was also that the back of his head was lacking. And also the smile he had at one point in conversation where people were laughing and he also smiled. Like it was a proper emotional facial expression that showed as if he actually understands what's going on. That was pretty uncanny and also connected with like immediate bodily response. So I think that's an important element of uncanniness and also of attraction because, for example, if you think of why we want to create human robots that look like humans. And would we be more attracted to robots that look like humans or robots that don't look like humans? Or that look like spiders, for example. Even if they were very, very intelligent, you know, still, I guess, I mean, it is expected that it's weird, but probably people will fall in love with robots.
With robots,
you know, but they should
whatever the
still
appearance
have
you think,
certain bodily appearance, you know. It's not just about intelligence. Okay, so that.
No, of course, the body thing is, of course, extremely important. But what I just wanted to emphasize is that there is also the problem of intelligence. That is how, because all your questions, in fact, all pertain more or less to the mind. That is, what exactly do we feel with this problem of a thinking robot? So I don't deny the importance of the physical, of course, part of the thing. Of course not. But I think we should also ask ourselves about the mind effect. because this is very important. I don't know if you saw the film Her, the movie Her, where Joaquin Phoenix, the main actor, falls in love with the artificial intelligence system that is just a voice coming out of his computer, and it is Scarlett Johansson's voice, and he totally falls in love with this voice. This is an interesting movie where you don't have a body, just a voice and a mind. And she's able to look, to understand his emotions, etc., but she's nobody. She doesn't have a body precisely. This is an interesting movie.
Thank you so much.
I mean, thank you for your questions, and yeah.